The rain hit my face, and I remembered dying, not the way people say they remember NEAR death experiences, flashes of light, tunnel vision, a choir of angels. I remembered the wet screech of tires, the crunch of metal against bone, the taste of blood and gasoline. I remember the exact moment my heart stopped beating on the asphalt outside the country club. And then I was standing in the driveway of the Morrison estate again, 18 years old, soaked to the bone, watching my adoptive mother shove a duffel bag into my chest. "You're not our daughter," Helene Morrison said, her voice as flat as the check she'd written for my 7th grade field trip. "You never were. Now get out." The words hit me like a replay. I'd heard them before, word for word, in the same flat tone, on the same stormy night. I'd walked away that first time. I'd walked 6 miles to the Greyhound station, cried in a bathroom stall, and spent 3 hours believing I deserved every bad thing that happened to me this time. I didn't walk. "You knew?" I said. My voice was steady in a way it hadn't been the first time around. "You've known for 6 months. The DNA results came back, and you sat on them until my tuition was due. That was the plan, wasn't it? Wait until I had nowhere to go." Helene's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she smoothed her expression back to ice. "We didn't want to disrupt your senior year." Bullshit. The word tasted like freedom. "You wanted to make sure I couldn't fight back. No financial aid, no dorm, no phone. Your phone is on our plan." Richa Road cut in, stepping four-way RD from the doorway. His silk robe was wet at the hem, but he didn't seem to notice. "It stays with us. Like I stay with you." I laughed, and it came out bitter and broken. "You're not even looking at me. You never looked at me. Not once in 15 years. I was just a tax write-off with a pulse." Richa RD's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone. Why would a going to do kick me out twice?" Helene grabbed the duffel bag from my hands and dropped it at my feet. "The gate code was changed an hour ago. The Allah RM is connected to the police. Don't try to come back." She stepped inside and closed the door. I stood there for a long moment, rain streaming down my face, and I let myself feel it. The humiliation, the rage, the hollow ache of being disc-ride like a piece of furniture. I'd felt all of this before. I'd ride it with me for 3 years, letting it poison every job interview, every friendship, every fragile hope I'd scraped together. Not this time did I drag the duffel bag under the awning of the guest house and broke the window with a rock. The Allah RM didn't cover the guest house. Julian had told me that years ago, bragging about the prank calls he made from the landline. I climbed through the broken glass, my hands bleeding, and dialed the number I'd memorized in my first life, but never had the courage to call. The sheriff's non-emergency line. Lassen County Sheriff's Office. A tired voice answered. "My name is Rhea Brennan." My teeth were chattering, but I forced the words out. "I just got kicked out of my house. I have a birth certificate that says I was abandoned in Nevada. I need to know who filed my DNA." A pause. "Miss, if you're in danger..." "I'm not in danger. I'm homeless. But I think someone's been looking for me. A DNA match came through 6 months ago. I need to know who." More clicking. I heard the dispatcher suck in a breath. "Honey, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but your file's been flagged. A family in New York matched you 6 months ago. They've been trying to reach the Morrisons ever since." The Morrisons never responded. Who? My heart was pounding so hard I could rely hear her. "Who's the family?" "The name's Wolf." She lowered her voice. "You ever heard of the Wolf Group?" "The Wolf Group?" I hadn't heard of them in my first life, not until it was too late. But I remembered the dream I'd had right before I died. A man with my eyes, reaching for me across a hospital room, his cufflinks gleaming with a wolf's head crest. "Who filed the match?" I pressed. "The father, the mother." The dispatcher hesitated. "But she's deceased. 6 years ago. The father, Damien Wolf, was only notified last week. And honey, he's coming for you. He just landed in Reno with about 200 bodyguards. He's already on the highway." I dropped the phone. The old desktop in the guest room had finally booted up. I typed Wolf Group into the CRSHBAR and felt my stomach drop. Private Melita Ree. Hostage recovery. Witness protection. 3 countries. A reputation for being the kind of wealthy that made other wealthy people nervous. The founder was Damien Wolf. I clicked on the only photo I could find, a grainy 80s yearbook picture. High cheekbones.
Da RK Hair.
Eyes that were the exact shade of hazel as mine, the eyes from my dream. The phone was still ringing on the floor. I picked it up just as the dispatcher said, "Miss Brennan, I'd stay put if I were you. There's a convoy coming up the mountain road. He's not stopping for the gate." I hung up, and then I heard it. The growl of engines, low and deep and relentless. I ran to the window and watched the headlights slice through the rain. A dozen of them, maybe more, snaking up the hillside like a pack of wolves. The gate didn't stand a chance. The first SUV didn't ram it. The driver didn't have to. A man in tactical HAR jumped out, attached a hydraulic cutter to the lock, and snapped it like a toothpick. The gate swung open. 20 black vehicles poured through, their tires spraying mud, their headlights illuminating the Morrison mansion like a crime scene. Julian's window lit up. I saw his phone pressed to the glass, recording. Mira was at the front door, her face slack with shock. Helene and Richa Rhodes stood frozen in the doorway, still in their robes, looking like deer caught in high beams. The convoy stopped. 100 men in black suits fanned out across the lawn, their movements precise and practiced. They didn't touch anything. They didn't have to. Their presence alone was a threat, and then the back door of the third vehicle opened and Damien Wolf stepped out into the rain. He didn't take an umbrella. He didn't run. He walked with the unhurried confidence of a man who knew he was the most dangerous person in any room, any city, any country. His suit was RK, perfectly cut and completely soaked through. His silver-streaked hair was plastered to his temples. His eyes, my eyes, I realized with a jolt, were fixed on the front door. He climbed the steps, 6 bodyguards flanking him in perfect formation. He didn't knock. He just reached past Richa Road and pushed the door open. Richa Road Morrison. His voice was low, controlled, and utterly devoid of RMTH. "I have a court order, DNA verification, and a very short temper. Where's my daughter?" Richa RD's mouth opened and closed. She's not here. I know she's not here." Damien stepped into the foyer, trailing rainwater across the marbly floor. "I know you threw her out in a thunderstorm 3 hours ago. I know you've been withholding her identity for 6 months. I know everything." Helene found her voice. "You can't just be ARG in here. I can do whatever I want." Damien didn't even look at her. "I have 70 lawyers on retainer. I have a private jet refueling as we speak. And I have a daughter who's been sitting in your guest house for the past hour, soaking wet and terrified, while you stood here pretending she doesn't exist." His men were already moving Tawa RD the guest house. I watched them through the rain-streaked window, my heart hammering, my hands trembling. One of them knocked. "Miss Brennan, your father is waiting." I opened the door. The walk across the driveway felt like it took a lifetime. Rain soaked through my clothes, plastered my hair to my face, dripped down my chin. I passed Julian's window. His phone was still recording, his expression slack with disbelief. I passed Mira, who'd stepped outside and was ring at me like I'd grown a second head dot, and then I was standing in front of Damien Wolf. He looked down at me for a long moment. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. I braced myself for a lecture, a demand, a dramatic gesture. Instead, he took off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked on the second word. "I'm so sorry I was late." I opened my mouth to respond, to ask a question, make a joke, do anything to break the tension. But all that came out was a sob, raw and ugly and 18 years in the making. Damien pulled me into his arms. His grip was firm, unyielding, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. His suit was cold and wet, but his chest was warm, and I could feel his heart beat against my ear, steady and strong. "You're safe," he murmured. "You're safe now. I've got you." Behind us, Helene's voice rose in protest. "This is private property. You can't just—" Damien didn't let go of me. He turned his head, just slightly, and spoke over his shoulder. "You're going to make this right. You're going to pay back every cent of tuition she would have owed." You're going to publicly acknowledge the fraud you committed by withholding my daughter's identity. And you're going to do it quietly, because if you make a scene, I'll make one that lands you in bankruptcy. You can't threaten us. Richa rode sta route. I'm not threatening you. Damien's voice was cold as steel. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You have 48 hours to comply. My lawyers will be in touch. He turned back to me, his expression softening. Let's go home, Ria. Home. I didn't have a home. I'd never had a home, not really. Just a room in a house where I was tolerated, not loved. But when he said it, I wanted to believe him. He led me to the CAR, his ARM still around my shoulders, his bodyguard RDS forming a wall between us and the Morrison family. I slid into the back seat, and he climbed in beside me, closing the door on the rain and the mansion and everything I'd left behind. The convoy pulled away. I watched the Morrison estate shrink in the side mirror. The broken gate, the slamming front door, the faces of my former family pressed against the windows like ghosts. Take me back, I said, and Damien's had snapped Tawa RD meat. What I met his eyes. I want to go back to the mansion. Not now, right now. There's something I left behind. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Stop the CAR. The convoy stopped. One of his men opened the door, and I stepped back out into the rain. I could feel Damien's gaze on my back as I walked across the lawn, past the guest house, past the broken gate. Helene was still standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened when she saw me. What a Ryu. I walked past her, into the foyer. Richa Rhodes stepped in front of me, his face red with anger. Get out of my house. Your house, I laughed. You can't even afford the property taxes without the adoption subsidy. This isn't your house, it's a bank's house. And you're a fraud. I pushed past him and climbed the stairs. Julian was in his room, still clutching his phone. Mira was cowering in the hallway. I ignored both of them and walked to my room, the tiny, windowless closet they'd called a bedroom for 15 euros. The jewelry box was still on the nightstand. Helene had given it to me on my 16th birthday, probably because it had been a free gift with a cosmetics purchase. But inside, tucked under the cheap plastic lining, was the only thing I'd ever owned that mattered. I pulled it out. A silver locket. Old. Tarnished, the clasp broken. I'd found it in a box of donated clothes at the shelter in my first life, after I'd already been kicked out. I'd thought it was just a pretty trinket. But when I'd pried it open, I'd found a photo. A woman with my eyes and a arcade hair, smiling at the camera. A baby and her arms. My mother. Elena. In my first life, I'd sold the locket for $50 RS. I'd needed the money for bus FA. I'd regretted it every day since not this time. I closed my fist around it and walked back out. Helene was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale with fury. You can't just take things from this house. Watch me. I held up the locket. This is mine. It always was. And you? I stopped at the bottom step, close enough to see the Fia, our flicker behind her anger. You knew, didn't you? When I came to you at 6, you knew I wasn't a random orphan. You knew someone was looking for me. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. I stepped closer. The DNA match came through 6 months ago. You blocked them. You ignored their calls. You let me believe I was worthless, that no one wanted me, that I was lucky to have you. You stole 18 years of my life. Helene's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. You ungrateful little. Let her go. Damien's voice cut through the foyer like a blade. He was standing in the doorway, his men flanking him, his face utterly unreadable. Helene released me like I'd burned her. Damien walked four-way RD and placed a hand on my shoulder. You all right? I nodded, still clutching the locket. Good. He looked at Helene, and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the whole room. If you ever touch her again, I will destroy you. Not your reputation, you. I will take everything you have, everything you love, everything you've ever worked for, and I will burn it to the ground. Do you understand me? Helene's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Damien turned to me. Ready? I took a breath. Ready. We walked out together, past the broken gate, past the SUVs, past all the witnesses who'd watched me get thrown out and never lifted a finger. Julian was still filming from his window. Mira was still cowering in the hallway, but I didn't look back. Our doors closed, and the rain kept falling, and I finally let myself feel it. The relief, the rage, the overwhelming sense that something had shifted in the universe. I had a father. I had a locket. I had a second chance. And I wasn't going to waste it. We have 48 hours, I said, looking at Damien. You said that to them. What happens after that? He smiled, just slightly. After that, we go to court. We expose everything, the fraud, the neglect, the lies. We make sure they can never hurt anyone like this again. Will that be enough? He was silent for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand. No, he said quietly. But it's a start. Rain hit my face, and I remembered dying. That was the first thing. The second thing was the anger. Not the cold, quiet anger I'd ride in my first life. The kind that made me shrink, apologize, make myself as small as possible. This was a wildfire, hot and bright, burning through every shred of fear I'd ever felt. I looked at Helene and Richa Road, standing in the doorway like a pair of porcelain dolls, and I didn't see parents. I saw predators. You knew, I said again, louder this time. You knew someone was looking for me. A DNA match came through 6 months ago. You blocked them, ignored their lawyers, and waited until my tuition was due to tell me. You wanted me gone with nothing. No money, no phone, no proof that I ever belonged here. Helene's face stayed composed, but I saw the flicker. The same flicker I'd seen before the door slammed in my face. The same flicker that said she knew she was caught. That's not how it happened. She root. You're right. I stepped forward, rain streaming down my face. It's worse. You didn't just abandon me. You erased me. You told me I was a burden. You told me nobody would ever want me. And when someone finally came looking, you hid me like a stolen bracelet you were afraid to pawn. Richa opened his mouth, but Damien held up a hand. Don't, he said, his voice soft but final. Don't try to explain. Don't apologize. Don't do anything except stand there and listen. Richa swallowed. He was a big man, 6 feet, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who used his size to intimidate. But next to Damien, he looked small. We're going to make arrangements for Ria's belongings, Damien continued. The items she brought from your house, she can have them. What she buys with her own money, she can keep. What you provided as foster parents, we'll return anything that was legally yours, but you'll be reimbursed for the contributions you made. I don't want their money, I said. Damien shot me a glance, something unreadable in his eyes. I know, but you have to let me handle the legal part. The legal part. I laughed, and it came out bitter. They stole my entire childhood. They made me believe I was worthless. And you want to handle them legally, Ria? His voice was patient, but firm. I've been searching for you for 18 years. I've had lawyers on standby for the last 6 months. I know exactly how to handle them. And I need you to trust me. That word stopped me cold. Trust. He'd been looking for me for 18 years. He'd just crossed the country to pull me out of the rain. And now he was asking me to trust him. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But trust wasn't something I knew how to do. Helene and Richa Road had taught me that trust was a trap, a way to get close so they could hurt you deeper. Okay, I said, forcing the word out. But I'm keeping my locket. Damien looked at the silver chain in my hand. Where did you get that? From a donation box. At a shelter. I didn't tell him about my first life. I didn't tell him I'd sold it once and regretted it. I think it was my mother's. Elena's. Something shifted in his face. That was Elena's. I gave it to her when you were born. She never took it off. Then she left it behind on purpose. I turned the locket over in my palm. Maybe she wanted me to find it. Eventually. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Keep it with you. It's all we have left of her for now. For now, he didn't answer. Instead, he reached down and took my hand, guiding me back the waiting convoy. We'll talk more on the plane, he said. Right now, I need to get you out of this house. I let him lead me through the rain. I didn't look back. The SUV was warm and dry. I sat in the back seat with the locket clutched in my fist, watching the Morrison mansion disappear behind us. Damien sat beside me, his phone pressed to his ear, murmuring instructions to someone about flights, lawyers, a schedule for the next 48 hours. I didn't listen to the details. My mind was still reeling. Hey. I tugged on his sleeve. Did you know about the DNA match before it came through? He paused, lowering the phone. I had a feeling years ago. There was a woman, a private investigator, who found a record of a child matching your birth date and location. But the trail went cold. She died before she could confirm anything. So you kept looking. I never stopped. He looked at me, and his eyes were tired but fierce. When the DNA match came, I knew it was you. I'd known it from the moment I saw the file. I just had to wait for the right moment. You waited 6 months. I wanted to give you a choice. I didn't want to drag you into my world without knowing if you wanted to come. He let out a breath. But when the dispatcher called and said you'd been thrown out, I made the choice for you. I couldn't let you stay in that house another night. I didn't know what to say. I'd been waiting my whole life, 2 lives, for someone to choose me. And now, here he was, choosing me without hesitation. What about the Morrisons? I asked. What happens to them? They'll pay. They'll lose the house, the subsidies, any chance of adopting another child. I'll make sure their names are reattached to this story for the rest of their lives. He paused. But they won't go to jail. They'll have to live with what they did. That's worse. I let that sink in. Jail would have been satisfying, but Damien was right. Living with the shame, knowing that everyone in their circle knew what they'd done, was a punishment that would never end. Now, he said, leaning back in his seat. What else do you want to know about Elena, about your family? I turned a locket over in my hands. Tell me about her. My mother. Damien was quiet for a moment. Then he began. Elena was a photographer. Not a famous one, she never wanted that. She preferred documentary work, capturing the lives of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. We met during a job in Budapest. I was there on a protection detail, and she was shooting a series on the city's underground refugee network.
His voice softened.
She was fearless. She'd walk into a war zone with nothing but a camera and a smile. I couldn't believe someone like her would ever look at me twice. But she did. She did. He smiled. She said I was the most serious man she'd ever met, and she made it her mission to make me laugh. It took her 6 months. But eventually she did. What happened? His expression dimmed. We got married. We had you. And then, she sta root getting nervous.
I don't know why.
She never told me. But she sta root hiding things, letters, files, phone calls she'd take in the other room. I thought it was just the stress of being a new mother. I was wrong. She took me and ran. She left a note. She said she couldn't trust my world. That the wolf group was too dangerous, and she wanted you to have a normal life. He looked down at his hands. I spent 6 months searching. Every country I could think of, every contact I had in every alphabet agency. And then I got the call from the coroner in Nevada. A house fire. A baby. Her records matched your birth certificate. You buried a coffin you thought held me. I buried a coffin, Rhea.
I don't know who was inside.
But I buried it thinking it was you. I felt the tears on my cheeks before I realized I was crying. Damien reached over and wiped them away with his thumb. I'm not going to leave you again, he said. I know I can't fix the RS we lost. But I can spend every day proving that I was never going to stop looking for you. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. I just leaned into his side and he wrapped his arm around me, and we sat like that as the convoy drove on through the rain. The plane was waiting when we reached Reno. It was a private jet, sleek and silver, with the wolf group crest on the tail, a wolf's head, RP and predatory. You have a private plane? I said, not sure if I was impressed or overwhelmed. I have 3. And a helicopter. And a yacht. Damien shrugged. I've been building an empire for 20 years. It's not impressive, it's just useful. Useful. Having money lets me protect people. That's all I use it for. I thought about that as we climbed the steps into the jet. The interior was all cream leather and polished wood, with a bedroom and a kitchen and a conference table. I sat down on a couch that was softer than anything I'd ever sat on. "If you have all this," I said, "how come you never found me, or liar I mean, before the DNA match? With all your resources, there are 8 million people in New York, 7 million in Nevada, and that's just 2 states." He sat across from me, his expression serious. "I had a team of investigators working around the clock for the first 5 years. We tracked down every lead, every rumor, every false sighting. But Elena was CA Refill. She left no trail. And when the coroner called, I believed her. Because you wanted to. Because the alternative was too painful to bear." He met my gaze. "You can't fault me for hoping you were dead, because that hope was a lie. And I let it consume me." I didn't fault him. I couldn't. In my first life, I'd let the hope of being wanted consume me too. I'd waited for a call that never came, a letter that was never written, the DNA match, I said. "How did it happen?" "Elena's mother, your grandmother, had a brother who worked for a DNA testing company. He submitted a sample years ago, but it went cold. Until 6 months ago." "Who submitted it?" Damien hesitated. "Your mother. Before she died. She'd submitted a sample to a fertility clinic in Nevada, under a fake name. It was flagged by the clinic when they shut down. The DNA match was automatically processed. So she knew." He nodded. "She knew someone might find you. She wanted that. She wanted you to have a chance to be found." I clutched the locket tighter. "She left me with the Brennans." That's what she said in the letter. She gave me to a family she trusted. The Brennans changed their name. They moved. They didn't leave four-way writing information. It wasn't until I had the DNA match that I found out they'd given you up to the state." "How do you know that?" Damien pulled a folder from his bag. "I had a team investigate. The Brennans, your birth parents, adopted you from Elena's friend, then abandoned you at a fire station when you were 6 months old. They didn't want to be found. They didn't want to explain." I read at the folder, not daring to open it. "My birth parents. The people Elena had trusted. The people who dumped me like Rebirth. They're dead now," Damien said gently. "They both died in a car accident years ago. They never told anyone where they got you. But Elena's letter, she didn't know they'd abandoned you. She thought you were safe." His voice was almost a whisper. "She spent the last years of her life looking for you. She never found you." I opened the folder. Inside were photos, records, letters. Elena's handwriting read in one letter, the same shaky scrawl I'd seen in the letter Damien had shown me. "I love you."
"I'm sorry."
"Please find her. She loved you," Damien said. "She just didn't know how to protect you from the world I lived in." I closed the folder and looked up at him. "So what happens now? You just take me to New York?" RT school there. I pretend I didn't spend the last 15 years being treated like a stray cat." Damien leaned four-way road. "You do whatever you want. You go to school, you travel, you take time to adjust. You don't have to make any decisions right now. But I want to." I met his gaze. "I need to know who I am. And I need to make sure the Morrisons can never do this to anyone else. Then we'll make sure." He held out his hand.
"Together."
I took it. The flight took 3 hours. I didn't sleep, but I closed my eyes and listened to the hum of the engines and the quiet murmur of Damien's voice as he made phone calls to lawyers, to his assistants, to someone named Marcus who apparently ran security. "We're landing in 20 minutes, Damien said, hanging up. "We'll go straight to the apartment." Apartment, penthouse. "It's secure, private, and you'll have your own room." He smiled just slightly. "I had them prepare it for you."
I didn't know what to say.
My whole life, both of them, I'd never had a room that was truly mine. Helene had always said it was temporary, a place to stay until I got my own life. Now I had a life. And it came with a penthouse. The skyline of Manhattan read through the window, golden and glittering against the dark sky. I pressed my face to the glass, watching the buildings go by, the bridges, the rivers. It was like a different planet from the country club where I died. We landed at a private airfield outside the city. Another convoy of SUVs was waiting, This time, even more than before. 20 vehicles, maybe more. Flanking us on all sides. Is this normal? I asked. I'm a high-profile target, and now I have a daughter. It's necessary. Necessary. That word again. I didn't like it, but I didn't argue that the penthouse was at the top of a building that looked like a fortress. The lobby had a security desk with more screens than an airport. We took a private elevator to the top floor, and when the doors opened, I stepped into a space that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the city that stretched forever. Furniture that looked like art. Your room is down the hall, Damien said, gesturing. I had them put up a sign on the door. I walked down the hall, my footsteps silent on the marble floor. There it was, a wooden door with my name painted on it in serif, slightly uneven letters. Did I opened it and stepped inside. The room was beautiful, soft gray walls, a canopy bed with white curtains, a desk by the window. But the wall was covered in photos.
Hundreds of them.
Me at school, me at the park, me at the mall. I was smiling in every single one. Where did you get these? I whispered. Damien Ape read in the doorway. From your school yearbooks, your classmates' social media, anywhere I could find you. I wanted to see you grow up. I wanted to know you. I walked up to the photos, touching the edges of one. Me at 10, holding a trophy from a spelling bee-eyed one. You were there, I said. You were watching. Not physically. His voice was rough. But I knew you existed. I knew you were out there. And I kept these to remind myself that you were real. I turned to face him. I died, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. In my old life, I died. I got hit by a car and I died. What? He stepped forward, Allah RM flashing across his face. Ria, you're fine. You're not in this life. In the other one. The one where you never found me. I couldn't stop shaking. I was homeless. I was working at a diner. I had no money, no friends, no future. And then, Damien caught me by the shoulders.
Hey.
Look at me. You're not homeless. You're not alone. You have me. But I remember it. I believe you. His voice was steady. I don't know how or why, but I believe you. And whatever you remember, whatever you went through, you don't have to go through it again. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. He held me, steady and unyielding, like a rock in a storm. We stayed like that for a long time. When I finally pulled away, my face was streaked with TRS and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so exhausted. I'll be okay, I said. I think. You'll be better than okay. He smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from him. You're a wolf. We survive everything. I laughed, a wet, shaky sound. Even the rain, especially the rain. I looked at the photos on the wall. The girl I'd been, the life I'd lived, the future I'd lost. I turned back to my father. What now? Now, he put his arm around my shoulders. Now we get you settled. We talk to the lawyers. We plan our next move. And then, when you're ready, we find out what your mother really meant by normal. He led me out of the room and into the living room, where a small array of assistants had Ape read with food and clothes and tablets. I had a father. I had a locket. I had a second chance, and this time, I wasn't going to let it slip away. Damien's phone buzzed at 6 a.m. I heard it from my room, down the hall, but I was already awake. I'd been awake for hours. SDA rang at the ceiling of a bedroom that was bigger than the entire ground floor of the Morrison house, trying to convince myself this was real. I wasn't convinced. The locket was still in my hand. I'd slept with it clutched against my chest, like a child with a stuffed animal. The metal was warm from my skin, the broken clasp digging into my palm. I'd never let go of it. And not this time. I patted Refute down the hall, following the sound of Damien's voice. He was in the kitchen, or what passed for a kitchen in this place, a gleaming expanse of marble and stainless steel that looked more like a showroom than a place where people actually ate. I don't see a re about the cost, he was saying into his phone. I want the best legal team money can buy. And I want them in my office by noon. He hung up and turned to find me hovering in the doorway. His expression softened. Couldn't sleep. Could you? He laughed, a short, tired sound. Not for the past 18 years. He gestured to the coffee maker. Help yourself. There's food in the fridge. I opened the refrigerator and STA read at the contents. Organic, everything. Fresh fruit. A dozen different kinds of cheese. I picked up an apple and bit into it, the crunch loud in the silent kitchen. Who is that on the phone? I asked. Americas. Head of security. He's CO, redinating with the lawyers. Damien poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. We have a meeting at 11. You should be there. Should I be nervous? Not nervous. Prepper read. He set down his cup. There's something I need to tell you before we go. I stopped chewing. What? Damien crossed the kitchen and sat down at the table, gesturing for me to join him. I sat across from him, the apple forgotten in my hand. The Morrisons ain't just going to roll over, he said. They've already hired their own lawyer. A woman named Valerie Cross. She specializes in defamation cases and custody disputes.
Custode I'm 18.
There's nothing to dispute. She's already filing papers to contest my paternity, claiming the DNA test was tampered with, claiming you were coerced into leaving their house. It's a stalling tactic, but it's effective. I felt the anger rise in my chest. They kicked me out. In the rain. At midnight. How is that not? It's a he said she said situation. They'll say you left Volney Riley. They'll say you were upset about the DNA results and ran away. They'll paint you as a troubled teenager who made a scene. A troubled teenager. I laughed, and it came out hollow. I was the most boring kid in that house. I studied, I cleaned, I never complained. The only time I made a scene was when I was bleeding. Damien winced. That's what they'll use. The fact that you didn't fight back. They'll say it proves you were unstable. I pressed my palms against the table. So, what do? We fight. He leaned. Four-way road. We have evidence. We have the DNA match, the signed affidavit from the dispatcher who took your call, the security footage from the Morrisons' own cameras that shows them shoving you out the door. They'll say I was already outside. Will they? He pulled out his phone and swiped to a video. I had Americas pull this last night. It's from a neighbor's doorbell camera, pointed right at the Morrisons' driveway. You can see Helene throwing your bag at you. You can see Richa Road closing the door in your face. I watched the grainy footage. There I was, small and soaked, standing in the rain while Helene gestured furiously. The door slammed. I stood there for a long moment, then picked up my bag and walked Tawa RD the guest house. You've had this since last night, I asked. I have a team that works fast. He put the phone away. But Valerie Cross is good. She'll try to get the footage thrown out. She'll argue that the Morrisons were acting in good faith, that they were just following protocol. What protocol? There's no protocol for abandoning your foster kid. Damien's jaw tightened. We have to be SMART about this. We can't just go in swinging. We need to be patient, methodical, and make sure every move we make is airtight. I sat back in my chair, processing. In my first life, I'd never fought anything. I just accepted what people gave me, the scraps, the insults, the indifference. The idea of fighting back, of having a team behind me felt foreign. What's the plan? I asked. First, we go to the meeting. I introduce you to the lawyers, we review the evidence, and we decide how we want to handle the press. The press, Damien's expression keened. The Morrisons have already leaked the story to a local news outlet. They're painting themselves as the victims, a loving family torn apart by a sudden DNA revelation. The headline this morning says, local couple devastated after foster daughter claims secret birth father. I felt my stomach drop. They're trying to make me look like the bad guy. They're trying to control the narrative. But we can control it too. He reached across the table and took my hand. This is your story, Ria. You get to tell it, not them. I nodded slowly. Okay, what do I say? Whatever you want. But I'd recommend sticking to the facts. The truth is on our side. The meeting was held in a conference room on the 35th floor of a building that bore the Wolf Group crest on every surface, the wolf's head, Shah RP and watchful, etched into the glass doors, the marbly floors, even the pens on the table. I sat at the head of the table, next to Damien. Across from us were 3 lawyers, all in expensive suits, their faces fully neutral. A fourth lawyer was on a video call from Los Angeles. "Rhea, this is Mitchell Klein," Damien said, gesturing to the man. "Arrest me. He's been with the Wolf Group for 12 years. He's handling the family court side." Mitchell nodded. "I've reviewed the footage, the DNA results, and the dispatcher's affidavit. We have a strong case. But Valerie Cross is aggressive, and she's already filed a motion to have the DNA evidence excluded." "On what grounds?" I asked. "She's claiming the DNA match was made using a private database that doesn't meet legal standards for paternity testing. It's a technicality, but it's enough to delay proceedings for weeks, maybe months." "And the footage," Mitchell's mouth tightened. "The Morrisons' lawyer is claiming the footage was obtained illegally. She's arguing that the neighbor who recorded it was violating the Morrisons' privacy by aiming a camera at their property." "That's ridiculous," I said. "Everyone has doorbell cameras now. You can't just—" "It's a stall tactic," Mitchell said. "Valerie Cross knows she can't win on the merits, so she's trying to win on procedure. She wants to drag this out until you're tired of fighting, until you're willing to settle for less than you deserve." I looked at Damien. "Can she do that?" "She can try." His voice was calm, measured. "But she's not the only one with a legal team. We have resources she can't match. And we have something else, a witness." "A witness," Damien nodded to Mitchell, who pulled out a folder. "A former employee of the Morrisons. A housekeeper who worked for them for 5 years. She's willing to testify that they treated you differently than their biological children and that they frequently spoke about getting rid of you after you turned 18. I felt a chill run down my spine. She heard them say that multiple times. She didn't come forward before because she was afraid of losing her job. But since she's no longer employed by them, she's willing to talk. I stopped, trying to process. That's going to help immensely. It establishes a pattern of behavior. It shows that the Morrisons didn't just find out about your DNA and react emotionally. They had a plan. They'd been talking about this for years. They've been planning to get rid of me for years. And I'd been so desperate to believe they read that I'd missed every sign. "What about the press?" I asked. "They've already put out their side." "What do we do about that?" Mitchell smiled for the first time. "We put out ours. Damien's already read a statement. We just need your approval before we release it." He slid a piece of paper across the table. I read it twice. Rhea Brennan is my daughter. I have been searching for her for 18 years. The Morrisons knew this and concealed it from her. They threw her out of their home in a thunderstorm, with no money, no phone, and no way to contact anyone. This is not the act of a loving family. This is abandonment. We will not rest until Rhea gets the justice she deserves. It was simple, direct, and devastating. "Can we say this?" I asked. "You can say whatever you want." Damien met my gaze. "But I'd recommend we keep it brief. Let the facts speak for themselves." I nodded and handed the paper back. "Release it." The statement went live at noon. By 2 p.m., my phone, a new one, courtesy of Damien, was buzzing with notifications. News outlets had picked up the story. Social media was a war zone. Half the comments were supportive, the other half were from people who believed the Morrisons' version. She's just a gold digger looking for a payday. If she really wanted to be found, she would have looked for him herself. The Morrisons were so generous to take her in. She should be grateful. I closed the app and tossed the phone onto the bed. "I can't do this," I said to the empty room. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was still there, and the world hadn't exploded. I took a shower, dressed in the clothes that had been laid out for me, simple, but well-made, and walked back to the conference room. Damien was still there, reviewing documents with Mitchell. They both looked up when I walked in. "I'm ready," I said. Damien's face relaxed.
"Good.
Because we have another meeting in an hour." "With who?" "A forensic accountant. We're going to trace the Morrisons' finances. I want to know where every dollar of adoption subsidy went." I blinked. "You're going after their money?" "I'm going after everything." He stood up. "They used you as a tax benefit for 15 years. That money wasn't meant for them, it was meant for you. And I'm going to make them pay every cent back." I nodded slowly. The Morrisons thought they were fighting a battle of legal technicalities. They had no idea what they were up against. The forensic accountant was a woman named Diana Park, who spoke with a calm intensity that made me feel like she'd already dissected the Morrisons' financial records and found them guilty of every crime on the books. Adoption subsidies in California are redistributed on a sliding scale, Diana explained, pulling up a spreadsheet on the conference room screen. For a foster-to-adopt placement like Ria's, the state pays the family a monthly stipend to cover food, clothing, medical expenses, and other necessities. How much? I asked. The amount varies based on the child's needs, but for a child with no special medical or educational requirements, the average stipend is about $700 Rs a month. I felt my stomach turn. I'd seen none of that money. My clothes came from thrift stores. My school supplies were the cheapest options available. And when I'd asked for help with a field trip in 9th grade, Helene had told me to get a job, $700 a month. I repeated, for 15 Rs. That's just the base stipend, Diana said. There are also annual subsidies for school supplies, clothing allowances, and medical reimbursements. I'm still combing through their records, but I estimate they received at least $120,000 Rs in subsidies and tax benefits over the course of your placement. $120,000 Rs. I felt the number sink into my bones. What did they spend it on? Damien asked. Diana pulled up another document. New CARS, luxury vacations. A renovation on their master bathroom, all of which they paid for with cash, which suggests they were trying to hide the money's origin. They were stealing from the state, I said. And from me. Technically, it's fraud. But we can also pursue a civil suit for the value of the support they never provided you.
Diana looked at me.
That's a separate rate case from the paternity issue, but it's equally viable. I leaned four-way road. I want to do it. I want to sue them. Damien's hand landed on my shoulder. You sure it's going to take time? It's going to be public. I don't see a I met his eyes. They made me feel worthless for 15 Rs. They used me for money, and then threw me away. I want them to understand what that felt like. He nodded slowly. Then we'll do it. All of it. The next morning, I woke up to a new reality. The news stories had exploded overnight, not just the local outlets, but national ones. Foster daughter discovers heir to fortune. One headline read, teen abandoned by family, claimed by billionaire father. I scrolled through the comments, bracing myself for the worst. But something had shifted. The Morrisons' version had crumbled under the weight of the affidavit, the footage, and the financial records that Diana had made public. They were pocketing her subsidy money. Unbelievable. I used to think she was being dramatic. Now I hope she gets everything. The Wolf Group is terrifying, but honestly, they deserve each other. I put the phone down and read at the ceiling. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt like people were on my side. There was a knock at my door. Damien's voice came through the wood. Ria, you ready? I got up and opened the door. He was standing there in a RK suit, his expression focused. Ready for what? Breakfast. And then we have a meeting with the PR team.
He paused.
And then, if you're up for it, I want to take you somewhere. Where it's a surprise. The PR meeting was short and efficient. A woman named Candace Weber outlined the strategy. Control the narrative, respond to attacks swiftly, and use social media to shari Ria's side of the story. You're going to get questions, Candace said. About your childhood, about the Morrisons, about your relationship with Damien. You don't have to answer everything, but you should be prepared. I am. Candace nodded. Good. Then I think we're done here. Damien led me out of the conference room and into an elevator. Where are we going? I asked again. You'll see. The elevator opened onto the ground floor. He led me through the lobby, past the security desk, and into a waiting car that we drove for an hour. The city gave way to suburbs, which gave way to rolling hills. Finally, we pulled up to a gate with a wrought iron crest on it, the Wolf Group crest. Is this your house? I asked. Damien smiled. This is your grandmother's house. My grandmother. Elena's mother. The woman who'd submitted the DNA sample years ago. I felt my heart race. She's been waiting to meet you, Damien said. She's been waiting for a very long time. The house was old, the kind of old that was expensive, the kind of old that had history. The porch had a swing, and the garden was overgrown with roses, and a woman was standing in the doorway, her hair white, her eyes the same hazel as mine. "Ria," she said, and her voice cracked. "You're here." I walked toward her, and when I was close enough, she reached out and took my face in her hands. "You have her eyes," she said. "Elena's eyes. I'd know them anywhere." I didn't know what to say. My grandmother, the only blood relative I'd ever met who wasn't Damien. "Come inside," she said, taking my hand. "I have so much to show you." I looked back at Damien, who nodded. "I'll be in the car. Take your time." I walked inside, and my grandmother led me through the living room, past the photos on the walls. Photos of Elena, young and vibrant, smiling at the camera, and into a back room that was Clea RLY her study. "I have something for you," she said, opening a drawer. "Elena wanted you to have it. She left it with me before she disappeared." She handed me a small wooden box. The surface was worn, the latch tarnished, but inside, on a bed of faded velvet, was another locket, identical to the one I held in my fist. "Open it," she said. I pried it open. Inside was a photo. Elena, holding a baby, a man with a familiar face standing behind her.
Damien.
They were both smiling, young and free, a family that hadn't yet been broken. "She wanted you to know," my grandmother said softly. "She loved you. And she loved him. She just didn't know how to keep you safe." I closed the locket and clutched it to my chest. "I know," I said. "She wrote me a letter." "She wrote you a letter?" My grandmother's eyes widened. "Where is it?" I pulled the folded paper from my pocket, the letter Damien had shown me on the plane. She read it with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "She was looking for you," she whispered. "Until the very end."
I didn't know what to say.
So I just stood there, holding the locket, and let myself feel it. The grief, the hope, the overwhelming relief that I'd finally found someone who wanted me. We stayed for an hour, maybe longer. My grandmother told me stories about Elena, about her fearlessness, her determination, her fierce love for the people she read about. I listened to every word, committing them to memory. When I finally walked out to the car, Damien was waiting, his expression fully neutral. "How is it?" he asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "She's amazing." "I know." He smiled. "She's the reason I never gave up looking. She always believed you were still out there." I looked at the house in the rear-view mirror, my grandmother still standing in the doorway, waving. "What happens now?" I asked. Damien pulled the car back onto the road. "Now we go home. We call the lawyers. And we make sure the Morrisons never hurt anyone again." We drove in silence for a while. Then I spoke. "I want to go back to school." "School?" "I want to finish what I route. I was supposed to go to college, Damien. I worked for it. I had good grades, I had scholarships, but they made me believe I didn't deserve it. I want to prove them wrong." He glanced at me. "You can go anywhere you want. I'll make sure of it." "Not anywhere," I said. "I want to stay close. I want to be near." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'd like that," he said. The call came at 3:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was already awake. Ring at the ceiling again, the locket cold against my collarbone. I'd root we ring it around my neck. Couldn't sleep without it. Damien's voice drifted down the hall. Low, controlled, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. I got out of bed and walked toward the sound. He was in his office. The door cracked open. Through the gap, I could see him standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. "I don't see what her lawyers saying," he said, his voice tight. "That footage is legitimate. If they try to suppress it, I'll release it to every news outlet in the country." A pause. "Then no. I'm not negotiating. Tell Valerie Cross that if she wants to avoid a media war, she'll drop the motion and accept the evidence as is. Otherwise, I'll make sure the Morrisons' names synonymous with fraud for the rest of their lives." He hung up and stood there for a long moment, his shoulders tense. I pushed the door open. Bad news, he turned, his expression softening when he saw me. Couldn't sleep. Could you? He let out a breath and gestured for me to come in. I sat down in the chair across from his desk, pulling my knees up to my chest. Valerie cross-filed an emergency motion, he said. She's asking the court to seal the footage and the financial records. She's arguing that releasing them to the public would cause irreparable harm to the Morrisons' reputation. They should have thought about their reputation before they threw me out. Damien almost smiled. I said the same thing. But the judge might side with her. We're dealing with a conservative court. They're more likely to protect the privacy of the foster parents than the rights of the former foster child. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So they could win, no. But they could drag this out for months. Yeah, RS maybe. He sat down across from me. Which is why I need to ask you something. Ask. He leaned four-way RD, his elbows on his knees. What if we bypass the court system entirely, not completely, but we take this to the public? We tell your story in your own words and let the people decide. What does that mean exactly? It means you go on television. You do interviews, you write your own statements, you control the narrative. The Morrisons have been telling their version for weeks. It's time we told ours. I read at him. In my first life, I'd been invisible. No one had ever asked me to speak. Not the Morrisons, not my teachers, not even the shelter workers who'd handed me meal vouchers. The idea of standing in front of a camera, of having millions of people hear my voice, felt terrifying. But the other part of me, the part that had been silenced for 15 years, wanted it. Okay, I said. Damien's eyebrows rose. Just like that, I've been quiet my whole life. Look where it got me. I met his gaze. If I'm going to fight them, I'm going to fight them my way. And that means telling the truth. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll make the calls. The interview was scheduled for the following afternoon. Damien arranged everything, the studio, the host, the questions. Candace came over to coach me, walking me through potential traps. Don't let them bait you, she said. They'll ask about your feelings, Tawa, RD the Morrisons. If you get emotional, they'll use it against you. Stick to the facts. What if they ask about Damien? Say exactly what you feel. But don't volunteer anything they haven't asked. I sat in the green room, ring at my reflection in the mirror. I was wearing a simple black dress, nothing flashy, nothing expensive looking, just clean and professional. Candace had insisted on the dress code. Just be yourself, she said, giving my shoulder a squeeze. That's all you need to do. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like a ghost, haunting the body of a girl who'd spent 18 years being told she wasn't enough. But when the producer called my name, I stood up and walked to the set. The studio was bright, sterile, filled with cameras and wires and people rushing around. The host was a woman named Audrey Vance, polished and professional, her smile calibrated for television. Rhea, thank you for coming, she said, shaking my hand. We're live in 3 minutes. Just look at me, speak clear RLY, and don't worry about the cameras. I nodded and sat down in the chair across from her. A makeup artist dabbed powder on my face, and then the lights went up, and Audrey's expression shifted into interview mode. Welcome back, she said, looking into the camera. Today we have a story that's captured the nation's attention. A young woman who spent 15 years in foster care, only to discover she's the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country. Rhea Brennan is here with us now. Rhea, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. Audrey leaned four-way RD, her voice RM but probing. Let's start at the beginning. You were adopted by the Morrisons when you were 6 years old. What was your childhood like? I took a breath. I was fed and housed, but I wasn't loved. The Morrisons made it clear from the beginning that I was a burden, a financial obligation they'd been forced to accept. They didn't celebrate my birthdays. They didn't come to my school events. They didn't even look at me most days. Audrey's expression flickered with something, sympathy maybe. And you didn't realize this was unusual. I thought it was normal. I didn't have anything to compare it to. The Morrisons were the only family I'd ever known. So I assumed every kid felt like a guest in their own home. What changed the DNA test? 6 months ago, the Morrisons received a match. Someone was looking for me, someone who'd been looking for 18 years. And instead of telling me, they hid it. They kept the information from me until my college tuition was due, and then they threw me out. Threw you out on a rainy night, in a thunderstorm, with no money, no phone, no way to contact anyone. I kept my voice steady. I had nothing but a duffel bag and a birth certificate with a name I'd never heard before. Audrey paused, letting the weight of my words settle. And that's when Damien Wolf found you. He found me the same night. He'd been sea-urching for me since I was 3 weeks old. When he heard what happened, he dropped everything and flew across the country. He had a convoy of SUVs and 200 bodyguard RDS, and he showed up at the Morrisons' gate and demanded to see me. The Morrisons' lawyer has claimed that you left Volney, Riley. What do you say to that? I say they're lying. The security footage from their neighbor's doorbell camera shows them throwing me out. I wasn't given a choice. I was told the gate code had been changed and the Allah RM was connected to the police. I was told if I came back, I'd be arrested. Audrey's eyes widened slightly. And you have evidence of this. We have footage, we have a witness, a former housekeeper who heard them say they planned to get rid of me after I turned 18, and we have financial records showing they pocketed over $100,000 RS in adoption subsidies that were supposed to be spent on me. The studio went quiet. I could feel the cameras on me, the crew watching from the shadows, the weight of the story landing. Ria, Audrey said, her voice softer now. What do you want people to know? I took a breath. I want them to know that I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. The Morrisons stole my childhood. They made me believe I was worthless. But I'm not worthless. And I'm not going to let them define who I am anymore. The interview continued for another 10 minutes. Audrey asked about my relationship with Damien, my plans for the future, my thoughts on the legal battle. I answered each question calmly, deliberately, letting the truth speak for itself. When the segment ended, Audrey reached over and squeezed my hand. That took courage, she said. I mean it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The interview went viral within hours. It was everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, every major news outlet in the country. The headlines shifted. No longer foster daughter claims secret birth father. Now they said, teen exposes foster PA rents fraud, and Morrison's accused of stealing adoption funds. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of people reached out, offering support, showering their own stories, thanking me for speaking out. But not everyone was kind. Asterisk, she's just doing this for attention. I bet she's lying about the subsidies. She looks like a puppet. Her father's controlling everything. Asterisk, I closed my phone and set it down on the table. Damien was watching me from across the room, his expression unreadable. Are you okay? He asked. I will be. I took a breath. Did you see the comments? I saw enough. He walked over and sat down next to me. You can't let them get to you. People are going to say terrible things no matter what you do. The only thing that matters is that you told the truth. I know. I looked at him. But what if they're right? What if I'm just a puppet? Damien's expression didn't shift. The first night we met, you looked me in the eye and demanded to go back to the Morrisons' house to get your locket. A puppet wouldn't have done that. A puppet would have accepted what they were given and not asked for more. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. I've never done this before. I've never fought for anything. Then you're Leah Renning. He reached over and took my hand. And you're doing it better than most people ever could. I was quiet for a moment. What happens next? Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. Valerie Cross just called. She wants to meet the Morrisons' lawyer. She says they're willing to negotiate. His eyes narrowed. But I don't trust it. She's too smart to fold this quickly. There's an angle I'm not seeing. What do you think it is? I don't know yet. He stood up. But we're going to find out. The meeting was held in the conference room where we'd first spoken with the lawyers. This time, Valerie Cross was there in person, flanked by 2 associates and a man in a gray suit I didn't recognize. Damien sat across from her, his expression calm but watchful. I sat beside him, my hands folded on the table. "Thank you for coming," Valerie said, her voice smooth and professional. "I'm hoping we can resolve this quickly." Damien didn't respond to the pleasantry. "What are you offering?" Valerie's smile didn't waver. "A settlement. The Morrisons are willing to acknowledge the DNA match and withdraw their objections to your paternity, provided you agree to certain conditions." "What conditions?" "They want Rhea to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They want the financial records to remain sealed. And they want a statement from you, something publicly acknowledging that they acted in good faith." I felt my jaw tighten. They didn't act in good faith. They used me for money, and then threw me away. Valerie turned to me. "I understand you're angry, Rhea, but a settlement would save everyone a lot of time and money. You'd avoid a lengthy court battle, and the Morrisons would avoid public humiliation. It's a fair compromise." "It's not fair." I kept my voice steady.
They stole from me.
"They lied to me. They made me believe I was worthless. And now you want me to pretend they were good parents." Valerie's expression didn't shift. "What I want is a resolution. This case is complicated, and it's going to take years to resolve through the courts. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes." I met her gaze. "I'm prepared to fight for as long as it takes." Damien glanced at me, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Then he turned back to Valerie. "Do you hear her? We're not signing any NDAs. And we're not pretending the Morrisons acted in good faith. If they want to avoid a court battle, they can admit what they did and apologize publicly. Otherwise, we'll see them in court." Valerie's smile tightened. "You're making a mistake. Don't threaten me." Damien's voice was ice. "You're the one who came to us. We're fine with letting the courts decide. We have the evidence, we have the witnesses, and we have the truth." "What do you have?" Valerie stood up, gathering her papers. "We'll be in touch." She walked out, her associates trailing behind her. The gray-suited man lingered for a moment, his eyes on me. Then he turned and followed. When the door closed, Damien let out a breath. That went about as expected.
"What was that?" I asked.
"What did she mean by make a mistake? I don't know yet." He frowned. "But that guy in the gray suit," I recognized him. "He works for the district attorney's office." "The DA? What were they doing here?" Damien shook his head. "I'm going to find out." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, STA ring at the ceiling, replaying the meeting in my head. The way Valerie had smiled when she'd said, "Make a mistake." The gray-suited man's eyes on me, that I didn't know what it meant. But I knew it wasn't good. I got up and walked to the window. The city was still awake, glittering with lights, 1,000 stories playing out beneath the skyline. Somewhere out there, the Morrisons were scheming. Somewhere, Valerie Cross was planning her next move. And somewhere, a man in a gray suit was watching me. I was still standing there when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, is this Rhea Brennan?" The voice was male, low, and slightly familiar. Who's asking?" "You don't know me. But I used to work for the Morrisons. I was their accountant for 3 years. I felt my heart stop. "What do you want?" "I want to help you."
He paused.
"I know things they've been hiding. Things they never put in the financial records. Things they made me sign NDAs about." "Like what?" "I can't tell you over the phone. But I can meet you." He gave me an address. "Tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. Come alone." "Wait." I STA route. But he'd already hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, STA ring at the glowing number on the screen. This was what Valerie had meant. The Morrisons weren't just battling me in court. They were hiding something, and their accountant was willing to talk. I didn't tell Damien that I knew I should have. I knew it was risky. But something in me said this was my chance. A chance to find out the truth on my own. To prove that I wasn't just a puppet. The next night, I left the penthouse while Damien was in a meeting. I took a cab to the address the accountant had given me. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, quiet and dimly lit. He was already there, sitting in a corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, nervous, his eyes rooting around the room.
"Rhea."
He stood up when I approached. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for calling." I sat down across from him. What's your name, Greg? Greg Patterson. He glanced around again. Look, I don't have a lot of time. If the Morrisons find out I'm talking to you, I'm dead. Dead, metaphorically. He leaned four-way road, but they have friends. Powerful friends. And they've been covering up something for a long time. What? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. This is everything. Financial records, emails, internal memos. They've been skimming from the adoption subsidies for IRS, but that's not the worst of it. What is? He slid the drive across the table. The Morrisons didn't just take you in randomly. They were paid. I read at him. Paid by who? By someone who wanted you hidden. Someone who paid them to keep you quiet, keep you away, keep you from ever finding out who you really were. My mind raced. Who paid them? Greg shook his head. I don't know. The payments came through a shell company. I could never trace the source. But they were regular monthly for 15 URS. 15 URS. The Morrisons hadn't just been pocketing the state subsidies. They'd been taking money from someone else. Someone who didn't want me found. Did my mother know? I asked. Elena, I don't know. He pushed the drive closer to me. But there's something else. The payment stopped 6 months ago, right around the time the DNA match came through. Someone found out you were being looked for, and they cut the money. I read at the drive. Why are you telling me this? Greg's face twisted with something like guilt. I've been CA-ring this for IRS. I wanted to quit, but they threatened me. They said if I talked, they'd ruin my CA career. But after I saw your interview, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. I pocketed the drive and walked out. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking. Someone had paid the Morrisons to keep me hidden. Someone had wanted me to be invisible, but someone else, the man in the gray suit, maybe had just made a mistake and I was going to find out who did. I didn't go straight home. I stopped at a diner, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and sat in a booth with the drive in my pocket. I didn't open it. Not yet. I was still processing. Someone had paid the Morrisons. Someone had wanted me gone, out of sight, forgotten. And they'd kept paying for 15 URS. Who and why? I thought about Damien. About the way he'd looked at me when he'd found me. The way he'd said, I've been looking for you for 18 URS. What if he'd been looking in the wrong direction? What if the person who'd hidden me wasn't a stranger at all? I shook the thought away. I couldn't afford to get paranoid. Not now. I paid for the coffee and walked out. The streets were quiet. The city hummed with distant noise, and I felt small and lost. That's when I noticed the CA. It was parked across the street. The RK and nondescript, its engine running. I couldn't see the driver, but I felt eyes on me. Rude walking faster. The CAR pulled out and followed. I turned down a side street, then another. The CAR followed. Rude running, my heart in my throat. The drive clutched in my hand. I rounded a corner and collided with someone, a man in a RK coat. Ria. His voice was calm, familiar. Damien, I thought I told you to stay in the APA meant, he said, his eyes scanning the street. I needed to. We'll talk later. He pulled me into the doorway of a closed shop. Right now, we need to move. The CAR drove past, slow and sea urching. When it was gone, Damien let out a breath. What were you doing? He asked, his voice tight. I held up the drive. Getting answers. He looked at it, his expression shifting. What is that? Proof that someone's been paying the Morrisons to keep me hidden. For 15 URS. Damien read at me. Someone paid them, yes. And we're going to find out who. We didn't go back to the penthouse. Damien led me through a maze of back alleys and side streets, his hand gripping my ARM with a steady pressure that kept me from panicking. The city hummed around us, distant sirens, the rumble of subway trains beneath our feet, the low thrum of a million lives being lived in parallel to ours. He stopped at a nondescript building, punched a code into a keypad by the door, and pulled me inside. The lobby was small, utilitarian, with a single elevator and a security camera in the corner. Safe house, he said, answering my unspoken question. I keep a few scattered around the city. Just in case. Just in case of what? He didn't answer. He just pressed the button for the 5th floor and stood in silence, his eyes fixed on the ascending numbers. The APA meant was spa RSE, but functional. A couch, a table, a kitchen that looked like no one had ever seen a cat in it. Damien locked the door behind us and pulled the blind shut. "Sit down," he said. I sat on the couch, the flash drive still clutched in my hand. He pulled up a chair and sat across from me, his expression unreadable. "START from the beginning," he said. I told him about Greg Patterson, the accountant, the phone call, the coffee shop, the drive. I told him about the payments, the shell company, the 15 Rs of regular our deposits. I told him about the gray-suited man at the meeting, the way Valerie Cross had smiled when she said, "Make a mistake." When I finished, Damien was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned four-way RD and took the drive from my hand. "This could be a trap," he said. "Greg Patterson might be working for the Morrisons. The drive could be corrupted, or it could contain false information designed to mislead us. It could be." I met his gaze. "But what if it's not? What if this is the only chance we have to find out who paid them?" Damien turned the drive over in his fingers. "If I plug this into a computer, I'm taking a risk. It could be bugged. It could contain malware that wipes our entire system. Then we use a burner computer, one that's not connected to anything." He looked at me, something shifting in his expression. "You've been thinking about this." "I've been thinking about a lot of things." I leaned four-way road. Someone paid the Morrisons to keep me hidden. Someone wanted me invisible. And that same person stopped paying 6 months ago, right when the DNA match came through. They knew someone was looking for me. They panicked. And now they're SCA red. Damien studied me. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we find out who it is. And I'm suggesting we do it fast, before they have a chance to cover their tracks." He was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up and walked to a closet in the corner of the room. He pulled out a laptop, old, battered, Clea RLY backup machine, and set it on the table. "Let's see what Greg Patterson gave us." The drive contained a single folder labeled Morrison Financials. Inside were spreadsheets, scanned documents, and a series of emails that dated back 15 years. I sat beside Damien at the table, my eyes scanning the screen as he clicked through the files. "Here," he said, stopping at a spreadsheet. "These are the payments. Monthly deposits, always on the same day, always through the same shell company." "Can you trace the shell company?" He clicked through more files. "The company is registered in the Cayman Islands. No name attached to the registration. But the payments came through a bank in Geneva. Geneva, Swiss bank. Private account. Almost impossible to trace without a court order." I felt my stomach sink. "So we're stuck." He didn't answer. He was scrolling through the emails, his expression growing darker. "Ria," he said slowly. "Look at this." He turned the screen Tawa RD me. It was an email dated 15 years ago, from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read payment terms. I read the body of the email. It was brief, clinical, just a confirmation of the payment amount and the schedule. But at the bottom, there was a signature. A single initialed O*V. V. I said aloud. "Who's V?" Damien's jaw tightened. "I don't know. But I know someone who might." We left the safe house at dawn. Damien made a call from a burner phone, speaking in low, clipped tones that I couldn't quite follow. Then he led me to a different car, not one of the SUVs, but a nondescript sedan that blended into the morning traffic. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To see an old friend." The drive took an hour. We wound through the city, past neighborhoods I'd never seen, past bridges and tunnels, and industrial districts that looked abandoned. Finally, we pulled up to a building that had no sign, no windows, and a door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. Damien knocked 3 times. A slot slid open, revealing a pair of eyes. "Damien." The voice was male, rough and unimpressed. "Long time." "I need information, Victor." The eyes studied me for a moment. Then the slot slid shut and the door clicked open. Victor's office was cluttered with papers and monitors, the walls covered in maps and photographs. He was a law RG man, bald, with a SCA R that ran from his temple to his jaw. "This is my daughter, Ria," Damien said. Victor's eyebrows rose. "The one you've been looking for, the same." He looked at me with something like curiosity. "And what brings you here, little wolf?" I need to know who's behind this. Damien placed the flash drive on the desk. This contains evidence that someone paid the Morrisons to keep Rhea hidden. 15 YRS of payments through a shell company in the Caymans and a bank in Geneva. The only identifier is a signature, V. Victor picked up the drive, turning it over in his hands. You know who it is. He was silent for a long moment. Then he set the drive down and leaned back in his chair. I knew AV once, he said. A woman. She ran operations out of Geneva, specialized in keeping people off the grid. Witnesses, defectors, children. Children, she had a network. Families who had taken children for money. No questions asked. She'd place them, pay the families, and make sure the children never found their way back. I felt my blood run cold. She was a broker. Something like that.
Victor looked at me.
If the signature on those payments is V, then this woman was the one who placed you with the Morrisons. She was the one who made sure no one found you. Why, who paid her? Victor shook his head. I don't know. She was CA Refill. She worked for anyone who could meet her price. By the time she was done, the trail was cold. I looked at Damien. Can we find her? Victor let out a low laugh. You can try. But V de Sape read yours ago.
Some say she's dead.
Some say she's hiding in a country with no extradition treaty. Either way, she's not easy to find. Maybe not. I met his gaze. But she made one mistake. She left a signature. And if she left a signature on these payments, she probably left it on other things too. Victor's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. You're sharper than you look. She gets it from me, Damien said dryly. Victor laughed again.
Fine.
I'll do some digging. But I can't promise anything. We went back to the penthouse. The city was waking up around us, the streets filling with commuters and tourists, and people living their ordinary lives. I watched them from the back of the CAR, feeling like an alien in my own body. What happens now? I asked. Damien didn't answer immediately. He was looking at his phone, his expression to RK. We have a problem, he said. What? Valerie Cross just filed another motion. This time, she's asking for a gag order. She wants to prevent you from speaking publicly about the case until it's resolved. A gag order? She can do that. She can try. He set the phone down. She's trying to control the narrative. She knows you're winning the public opinion battle, and she wants to shut you up. I felt the anger rise in my chest. They can't do that. They can't just silence me. They can try. Damien met my gaze. But I have a plan. What kind of plan? We fight the gag order. In court. Open court. We bring in every piece of evidence we have, the footage, the financial records, Greg Patterson's testimony. We force Valerie Cross to argue her case in front of the public. Won't that give them more time to hide things? Maybe. But it will also expose them. They're playing defense now, Rhea. They're SCA Red. And SCA Red people make mistakes. I nodded slowly. Let's do it. The hearing was scheduled for 3 days later, that I spent those 3 days preparing. Candace came to the penthouse every day, coaching me on what to say and how to say it. Mitchell reviewed the evidence with Damien, making sure everything was airtight. Diana PARK continued her forensic analysis, finding new discrepancies in the Morrisons' financial records, and I sat in my room, STA ring at the photos on the wall, trying to remember who I was before all of this. The day of the hearing, I woke up EARLY. I dressed in the same black dress I'd worn for the interview, put my hair in a simple ponytail, and walked out to the living room where Damien was waiting. Ready? He asked. Ready. The courthouse was a massive stone building, its halls lined with portraits of judges and lawyers and men in powdered wigs from centuries past. It smelled like old wood and dust and we walked into the courtroom. The Morrisons were already there, sitting at their table with Valerie Cross. Richa Rode looked pale, his suit rumpled. Helene's eyes were red-rimmed, but her expression was as cold as ever. They looked at me as I walked in, and I felt the weight of their gaze, the same cold assessment they'd given me for 15 years. I didn't look away. The judge entered, and everyone rose. He was an older man with a tired face and thick glasses, his robe hanging loosely on his thin frame. Miss Cross, he said, settling into his chair. I've reviewed your motion for a gag order. This is a serious request. I'll need to be convinced. Valerie Cross stood. Your Honor, the defendant, Ria Brennan, has been making public statements that are prejudicial to the Morrisons case. These statements are true. I said. The judge looked at me. Ms. Brennan, I haven't given you permission to speak yet. Damien put a hand on my arm, but I didn't stop. Your Honor, I've spent 15 years being silenced. By the Morrisons, by the system, by everyone who told me I didn't matter. I'm not going to be silenced anymore. I'm not going to let them take away my voice again. The judge was silent for a moment. Then he turned to Valerie Cross. Ms. Cross, I've seen Ms. Brennan's interview. I've also seen the footage from the Morrisons' neighbor's doorbell camera and the financial records Ms. Brennan's legal team has submitted. I'm not convinced that a gag order is justified. Valerie's jaw tightened. Your Honor, the Morrisons' reputation is at stake. Reputation, I cut in. They stole from me. They lied to me. They made me believe I was worthless. And now they're trying to hide behind a gag order because they're afraid of the truth. The judge held up a hand. That's enough, Ms. Brennan. I fell silent, my heart pounding. The judge looked at Valerie. Ms. Cross, I'm denying your motion. The gag order is not granted. Valerie opened her mouth to protest, but the judge shook his head. This court values transparency. The parties involved are free to speak to the press as they see fit, as long as they don't interfere with the proceedings. He banged his gavel. We'll reconvene in 30 days. The relief hit me like a wave as soon as we left the courtroom. She's not going to stop, Damien said, his voice low. Valerie Cross will find another angle, another motion, another way to drag this out. Then we'll keep fighting. He looked at me, something like pride flickering in his eyes. You did well in there. I was SCA red. Good. Fia R is healthy. He put his hand on my back. Let's get out of here. We were walking through the courthouse lobby when I saw him, the gray-suited man. The one from the meeting with Valerie Cross. He was standing by the doors, watching me. I stopped. Damien followed my gaze. What is it? That's the man from the meeting. The one from the DA's office. Damien's expression hardened. He took a step forward, RD, but I held up a hand. Wait. I walked Tawa, RD the man. Can I help you? He looked at me, then at Damien, then back at me. I'm not here in an official capacity, he said, his voice quiet. I'm here because I think you deserve to know the truth. The truth about what? He glanced around, then lowered his voice. The payments you found. The ones from the shell company. I can't tell you who made them, but I can tell you they were authorized by someone very high up in the state government. State government, someone connected to the family court system. Someone who had access to your file.
He paused.
Someone who was paid to keep you hidden. My mind raced. Who? Get me a name, the man said. And I'll tell you what I know. He turned and walked out before I could respond. I stood there, heart pounding, watching him disappear into the street. What was that about? Damien asked, coming up beside me. He said the payments were authorized by someone in the state government. Someone connected to the family court. Damien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Let's get back to the penthouse. We have work to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, STA ring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the puzzle. Someone in the state government had authorized the payments. Someone who had access to my file. Someone who'd been paid to keep me hidden. Who would want to keep me hidden, who would benefit from me being invisible. I thought about Elena. About the letter she'd written. The Fia are in her words. She'd been running from someone she hadn't named. Someone she hadn't told Damien about. What if she'd been running from the same person who'd paid the Morrisons? I got up and walked to the window. The city glittered below me, endless and unknowable. Somewhere out there, a ghost was waiting. Someone who'd pulled the strings for 15 years. I wasn't going to let them get away. The morning light came slowly. I'd fallen asleep on the couch at some point, my phone still clutched in my hand. When I opened my eyes, Damien was standing over me, holding a cup of coffee. You look like you need this. I sat up, accepting the coffee. Did you get any sleep, Sam?
He sat down across from me.
I spent the night making calls. I have a lead. A lead, a name. The DA's office is Seagull Imperative. They're not happy about the family court connection. They gave me a name. I set down the coffee. Who? Judge Helena Shaw. She retired 5 years ago, but she was on the bench for 20 years. She presided over a lot of family court cases. And she was the judge who signed off on your adoption. I felt my stomach drop. She was the one who authorized the payments. We don't know that yet. But she was the one who closed your file. She was the one who made sure no one could access it without her approval. I read at him. How do we find her? She's in the system. Witness protection. The DA's office gave me her location. Off the record. Witness protection? Why would she be in witness protection? Damien's jaw tightened. Because she's been hiding from someone too. The same someone, probably. If she's willing to talk, we might finally get some answers. I stood up, my heart pounding. Let's go. Judge Helena Shaw was living in a small town in upstate New York. The drive took 4 hours. The landscape changed from urban sprawl to rolling farmland, the buildings growing smaller, and with their apart. Finally, we pulled up to a modest house with a white picket fence and a den full of roses. Damien knocked on the door. A woman answered. She was older, maybe late 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes. She looked at Damien, then at me, and her expression flickered with recognition. You found me, she said softly. We need to talk, Damien said. She stepped back, holding the door open.
Come in.
The house was cozy, filled with books and photographs, the kind of place where someone had lived a long, quiet life. She led us into the living room and gestured for us to sit. I've been expecting you, she said, settling into an armchair. I knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. The payments, I said. You authorized them. She looked at me, her expression sad. I didn't want to, Ria. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when someone has leverage over you. She folded her hands in her lap. 15 years ago, a woman came to me. She told me your mother had placed you with the Morrisons, and that it was in everyone's best interest to keep it that way. She paid me to close your file and block any attempts to find you. Who is the woman? The same one who brought me to the Morrisons. She called herself V. V, the same initial from the payments. Did you ever meet her face to face? Damien asked. No. She always wore a mask. But she paid well, and she had evidence that could have ruined me. Helena's voice trembled. I had no choice. I accepted the money and did what she asked. Where is she now? I asked. Helena shook her head. I don't know. The payment stopped 6 months ago, and I haven't heard from her since. I assumed she moved on. Or she died, Damien said. Helena's eyes flickered. Maybe. I leaned four-way road. If you could identify her, describe her, anything, it could help us. Helena was silent for a long moment. Then she said, she had a scar on her left hand, a burn scar from when she was a child. She told me once that she was in a fire. A fire. Elena had died in a fire. Or at least, that was what everyone had been told. Thank you, I said. Thank you for telling me. Helena nodded, her eyes glistening.
I'm sorry, Ria.
I'm sorry I was part of this. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that we drove back to the city in silence. My mind was racing. A woman called V. A scar on her hand. A fire. And someone in the state government who'd authorized the payments. Who is she? I asked aloud. Who is this woman? Damien glanced at me. We'll find her. Victor's already working on it. He has contacts in Geneva. If she's still alive, he'll find her. But what if she's not alive? What if she died in the fire? Too. Damien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, then we'll find out who she was working for. We were crossing the George Washington Bridge when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. Hello, Ria. The voice was male, strained, and rely above a whisper. It's Greg, the accountant. Greg, what's wrong? They know. His voice was shaking. The Morrisons know I talked to you. They have someone here, a man in a gray suit. He's asking questions. I think he's going to The line went dead. I sta read at the phone, my heart pounding. Greg, Damien asked. What happened? The Morrisons know, I said, my voice hollow. They know he talked to us. And there's a man in a gray suit asking questions. Damien's face went pale. He pressed his foot to the accelerator. We're going to get him, he said. We're going to get him now. We arrived at Greg's apartment building 20 minutes later. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. My heart in my throat. The apartment was empty. His laptop was gone. His phone was on the floor, cracked. And on the table, there was a note. Watch your step. I picked up the note, my hand shaking. Damien pulled out his phone and dialed. Get a team to this address. Greg Patterson, accountant, 229, Montgomery Street. He's missing. He hung up and looked at me. We're not going to stop, he said. Whatever they do, we're not going to stop. I nodded, clutching the note in my hand. We weren't going to stop. But I was rooting to realize that the people who'd hidden me weren't just wealthy. They were willing to kill. The note was still in my hand when Damien's team arrived. They flooded the apartment with practiced efficiency, taking photos, dusting for prints, securing the scene. I stood in the corner, watching them work, the words, watch your step, burning in my memory. Damien was on the phone, his voice low and clipped. I caught fragments. CRCH the building. Check the cameras. Find him. He hung up and walked over to me. We'll find him, he said. Will we? I looked at him. He called me because he was SCA red. He said they knew he talked to us. And now he's gone. Damien didn't try to comfort me with empty promises. He just stood there, letting me feel the weight of it. They took him because they're SCA red, he said finally. SCA red people make mistakes. And we're going to be there to catch them when they do. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The CRCH turned up nothing. Greg's phone was the only clue, and it was too damaged to yield any data. The building's cameras had been wiped. Someone had accessed the system and deleted the footage from the past 12 hours. Professionals, Damien said, his jaw tight. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was planned. I thought about the gray-suited man at the courthouse. The way he'd looked at me. The way he'd walked out before I could ask more questions. Valerie Cross, I said. She knew about Greg. She knew he was talking to us. Damien nodded slowly. She might not have been involved directly, but she knew. The Morrisons knew. Someone in the DA's office knew. Who else knew about the flash drive? He paused.
Victor.
Helena Shaw, the accountant, and the gray-suited man. He said he wanted to help, but he could have been lying. I thought about his words. Asterisk, get me a name. And I'll tell you what I know. Asterisk, he'd been fishing for information. Trying to find out who we were talking to. We need to find Greg, I said. Before it's too late. Victor called the next morning. I found something, he said, his voice rough through the speaker. The shell company. It traces back to a law firm in Geneva. The law firm has a client list. And one of the names on that list is Familia R. Who? Damien's old partner.
Maericua Webb.
I felt the air leave my lungs. Americus Webb. I'd heard the name before. Damien had mentioned him once, in passing, when we'd been talking about the EARLY days of the Wolf Group. Americus Webb is dead, I said. Officially, yes. But death certificates can be faked.
Victor paused.
I found a transaction record from 6 months ago. A payment from the shell company to a private account in the Caymans. The account is registered to a name that matches Webb's. Match what? His alias. He used it when he was still working with Damien. I thought it was a coincidence at first, but the payment amount is the same, the exact same amount the Morrisons were getting every month. I set the phone down and walked to Damien's office. He was at his desk, reviewing documents, but he looked up when I came and, we need to talk. I said that I told him about Victor's call. Damien listened in silence, his face unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sta read at the ceiling. Americus Webb, he said finally. I haven't heard that name in YRS. He was your partner. He was my friend. Damien's voice was flat. We sta root the Wolf Group together. He was the strategist, I was the muscle. We were a good team, until he wasn't. Until what? He got greedy. He STA route skimming from the company, taking side deals without telling me. I confronted him, and he denied it. I found proof, and he tried to kill me. Damien's eyes hardened. I survived. He didn't. Or so I thought. He's been paying the Morrisons this whole time. He would have had the resources. And the motivation. Damien stood up and walked to the window. If he's alive, he's been hiding for 15 years. And if he's been paying the Morrisons, that means he knew about you before I did. He knew I existed. He knew Elena was pregnant. He knew she took you and ran. And he knew she placed you with the Morrisons. Damien turned to face me. He was the one who told me you died in the fire. He said he'd confirmed it through his own sources. He lied. He lied. Damien's voice was cold. And he's been lying ever since. We spent the next 48 hours tracking America's web. Victor's contacts in Geneva came through with a location, a private estate in the south of France, registered to a shell company that traced back to Webb's alias. Damien made a call, and within hours, we had a planned, limited engagement, he said, studying the satellite images. He's got security, but it's light. He's been hiding for 15 years. He's gotten comfortable. Comfortable enough to make a mistake.
Exactly. He looked at me.
You're not coming. What, too risky? If Webb is behind this, he'll want to meet you. If he sees you, he might try to use you as leverage. I can handle myself. I know you can. But I'm not taking that chance.
His voice softened.
I just found you. I'm not losing you again. I wanted to argue, but I saw the fear in his eyes. The same fear I'd seen when he'd found me in the rain. Fine, I said. But I want to be there. In the CAR, watching. He hesitated, then nodded. Stay in the CAR. We flew to France the next morning. The private jet was sleek and fast, cutting through the clouds like a blade. I sat in my seat, STA ring out the window, watching the ocean pass beneath us. I thought about America's web, about the man who'd been Damien's partner, who'd faked his own death, who'd paid the Morrisons to keep me hidden for 15 years, who'd threatened Greg Patterson and taken him, and I thought about the note. Watch your step. We landed in Nice and drove to a small coastal town. The estate was perched on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean, surrounded by olive trees and cypress. Damien's team moved into position, snipers on the roof, operatives at the gates, a perimeter that would have made a Melita rebase jealous. This is it, Damien said, adjusting his earpiece. Stay in the CAR. I watched him walk Tawa RD the estate, his men fanning out behind him. I sat in the passenger seat, my heart pounding, my hand resting on the door handle. The estate's gate opened. A man walked out, tall, silver-haired, with a face that looked vaguely familiar from the photos I'd seen.
Narrated web.
He didn't look surprised. He looked like he'd been expecting this. Damien, he said, his voice rang across the Cordier Road. I wondered when you'd figure it out. Damien stopped a few feet away from him. Where's Greg Patterson safe? Webb smiled. For now. He's on a remed, if that's what you're worried about. Where is he? Inside. Waiting. Webb's smile widened. I wanted to give you a chance to say goodbye. Damien's hand twitched Tawa RD his holster, but he didn't draw. You've been hiding for 15 years. You faked your own death. You paid the Morrisons to keep Rhea hidden.
Why?
Webb's smile faded. Because Elena was mine. Damien went still. What? Elena and I were together before she met you. She was going to leave you for me, but then she got pregnant. She said she couldn't do that to the baby. Webb's voice hardened. She chose you over me, and I couldn't let that stand. So you paid the Morrisons to hide her. I paid them to hide Rhea. Elena was just collateral damage. He shrugged. She died in a fire. Remember, she was trying to get Rhea back. She was trying to undo what I'd done. You killed her. I didn't kill her. The fire killed her. Webb's eyes flickered. But I didn't stop it either. Damien lunged. I was out of the CAR before I knew what I was doing. I ran across the Cordier RD, my legs moving faster than my brain, and I threw myself between them. Stop. Damien froze, his fist inches from Webb's face. I stood there, breathing hard, looking at the man who'd stolen my childhood. "Let him go," I said. "Let him go, or you'll never know what it feels like to be free." Webb laughed.
Free.
"I've been free for 15 years. You've been in hiding. That's not freedom. That's a cage." I met his gaze. "You paid the Morrisons to keep me hidden because you couldn't stand that Elena chose Damien over you. You destroyed my life because you were jealous." His smile faltered. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you're pathetic." I stepped closer. "I know you spent 15 years paying people to erase a child you'd never even met. I know you killed the woman you claimed to love. And I know you're going to spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, thinking about everything you lost." Webb's composure cracked. For a moment, I saw something raw, something wounded. Behind his eyes, then Damien's men moved in. Greg Patterson was found in the basement of the estate, unarmed but shaken. He was grateful.
He was relieved.
He was also terrified. "They're going to kill me," he said, when Damien's operatives brought him out. "They'll find a way to get me." "They won't get anywhere near you," Damien said. "You're going to be under protection for the foreseeable future." Greg nodded, his face pale. I watched as the paramedics checked him over, as the police arrived to take Webb into custody.
He didn't resist.
He just looked at me, his expression hollow. "She would have hated what you've become," I said, as they led him past me. He didn't answer. The flight back to New York was quiet. Damien sat across from me, his hands folded in his lap. He hadn't spoken since we'd left the estate. "You were right," he said finally. "About what?" "About letting me go. If you hadn't stepped in, I would have killed him."
He looked at me.
"And then I would have been no better than him." "You're nothing like him." "I hope not." He leaned. "Four-way road. I've spent 18 years thinking about revenge. Thinking about the person who took you from me. And now that I've found him, I don't feel any better." I reached across and took his hand. "That's because you're a good person," I said. "You don't need revenge. You need to move four-way road." Damien looked at me, his eyes wet. "How do you know that?" "Because I spent 3 years, 3 lives, thinking about revenge. And it never made me feel better." I squeezed his hand. "The only thing that made me feel better was finding you." We landed in New York that evening. The city was still glittering, still alive, still filled with a million stories playing out beneath the skyline. I stood on the balcony of the penthouse, looking out at the lights. Damien came up behind me. "You okay?" "I'm thinking about Elena." "What about her?" "She died trying to find me. She died trying to undo what Webb had done." I turned to face him. "She loved me. She wanted me to have a normal life. She wanted you to be safe. She wanted me to be happy." I looked back at the city. "I think that's what I want too." Damien put his hand on my shoulder. "Then we'll make sure you get it." I nodded, leaning into his side. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt like I had a future. The trial sta route on a Monday. I woke up before dawn, the locket cold against my chest, and lay in bed for a long time. STA ring at the ceiling. The photos on the wall seemed to watch me, the girl I'd been, the life I'd lived, the future I'd almost lost. I didn't feel STA red. I felt ready. Damien was already in the kitchen when I walked out, his suit immaculate, his expression focused. He handed me a cup of coffee without a word. "You slept?" he asked, a little. I took the coffee. Enough." We stood there in silence, drinking our coffee, the city waking up around us. The sun was rising over the skyline, painting the buildings gold and amber. "Today's the day," I said. "Today's the day." He set down his cup. "You ready?" "I've been ready my whole life." The courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing, microphones thrust four-way RD like weapons. Damien's men formed a corridor through the crowd, their movements precise and practiced. I walked between them, my head high, my heart steady. Valerie Cross was already inside, her face fully neutral. The Morrisons sat at their table, Richa rode pale and hollow-eyed, Helene rigid and cold. They didn't look at me. I sat down at our table, Damien beside me, Mitchell and the rest of the legal team flanking us. The judge entered, and everyone rose. "Good morning," he said, settling into his chair. We're here today to hear the case of Rhea Brennan versus the Morrisons. Miss Cross, you may proceed. Valerie Cross stood, her voice smooth and practiced. Your Honor, my clients have been unfairly maligned by a campaign of public misinformation. The defendant has used the media to paint them as villains, when in fact they provided a home and a family for a child who had nowhere else to go. Your Honor, Mitchell said, rising. The Morrisons received over $100,000 RS in adoption subsidies that were never spent on Rhea. They withheld her true identity for 6 months. They threw her out in a thunderstorm with nothing but a duffel bag. The evidence is clear. The judge nodded. I've reviewed the evidence. I'll hear opening statements, and then we'll call witnesses. The first witness was Greg Patterson. He walked to the stand with shaking hands, his face pale but determined. He testified about the payments, the shell company, the 15-year RS of monthly deposits. He testified about the fear he'd felt when the Morrisons found out he'd talked to me. Did they threaten you? Mitchell asked. They said they would ruin my career. They said they would make sure I never worked in accounting again. And then they sent a man to my apartment. A man in a gray suit. Did you recognize this man? Greg shook his head.
No.
But he told me that if I paraded with the investigation, I'd be killed. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel. Order, he said. Continue. The next witness was Helena Shaw. She walked to the stand slowly, leaning on a cane, her silver hair catching the light. She looked fragile, but her voice was steady. Your Honor, I was the judge who presided over Rhea's adoption. I was also the judge who authorized the payments from the shell company. Who authorized you to make those payments? Mitchell asked. A woman called V. She gave me the money and told me to close Rhea's file. She told me to make sure no one could find her. Did you know who V was? Helena shook her head. I never saw her face. But she had a SCAR on her left hand. A burn SCAR. She told me she'd been in a fire. The courtroom went quiet. I looked at Damien. His face was unreadable, but his hand was gripping the table. Thank you, Mitchell said. No further questions. Valerie Cross rose. Judge Shaw, did you ever question the morality of what you were doing? Helena met her gaze. Every day. But I was afraid. I was afraid of what V would do to me and my family. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm here now, telling the truth. The trial continued for 3 days. Witness after witness took the stand. Former employees of the Morrisons, financial experts, the sheriff's dispatcher who'd taken my call on the night of the storm. Each one added a piece to the puzzle, painting a picture of a family that had used me for money and thrown me away. And then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, my legs steady, my hands clasped in front of me. The judge looked at me with something like kindness. Miss Brennan, he said, you may testify. I took a breath and began. I was 6 years old when the Morrisons adopted me. I didn't know I wasn't their biological daughter. I didn't know I was being used for money. I just knew I wasn't loved. I told them about the thrift store clothes, the silent dinners, the way Helene would look through me like I wasn't there. I told them about the night they'd thrown me out, the rain, the duffel bag, the shattered gate. I didn't fight back because I didn't think I had a choice, I said. The Morrisons made me believe I was worthless. They made me believe I didn't deserve anything better. I paused, looking at the Morrisons. Helene's face was pale, her jaw tight. Richa Road was STA ring at the table, but I was wrong. I continued. I did deserve better. And I'm here to make sure that no one else goes through what I went through. The jury deliberated for 2 days. I spent those 2 days in the penthouse, pacing STA ring at the walls, clutching the locket. Damien stayed with me the whole time, not saying much, just being there. They're going to find her guilty, I said, more to myself than to him. We don't know that yet. I know it. I turned to face him. They have the evidence. They have the witnesses. They have the truth. Damien nodded slowly. Then we wait. The verdict came on a Thursday. I walked into the courtroom with Damien at my side, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. The judge looked at them. Have you reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find them guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, we find them guilty. Helene let out a sharp cry. Richa Rhodes slumped in a seat, his face gray. The judge banged his gavel. The defendants will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Sentencing will take place in 60 days. I sat there, the words washing over me. Guilt. They were guilty. We walked out of the courthouse together, Damien's hand on my back, the reporters shouting questions from all sides. I didn't answer them. I didn't have to. The sun was bright, the sky clear, and for the first time in 2 lives, I felt like I could breathe. Congratulations, Damien said, his voice soft. I didn't do it alone. You did the hard part. He looked at me, his eyes wet. You spoke up. You fought back. You didn't let them win. I smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't felt in years. I had a good reason. What's that? I reached up and touched the locket around my neck. Because I finally found someone worth fighting for. The sentencing hearing was held 2 months later. The Morrisons were sentenced to 5 years in prison, with parole possible after 3. They were also ordered to pay restitution for the subsidies they'd stolen, $120,000 Rs, plus interest. I didn't watch them being led away. I didn't need to. I had other things to do. Damien and I flew to Nevada a week later. The fire station was still there, a small brick building on a quiet street, its doors painted red, its flag flying high. I stood outside, STA ring at it, the locket RM in my hand. This is where Elena left me, I said. Damien stood beside me. She must have been terrified. She was trying to protect me. I looked at him. She didn't know what would happen. She just knew she had to keep me safe. She did keep you safe. In the end. He put his hand on my shoulder. You're here. You're alive. And you're free. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. We drove to the cemetery where Elena was buried. The headstone was simple. Elena Wolf, beloved mother. The grass was green, the flowers fresh. Someone had been taking care of her grave. I did, Damien said when I asked. Every year. I didn't even know if she was really in there, but I couldn't leave her alone. I knelt down and placed a hand on the stone. I found you, I whispered. I found your family. I'm going to be okay. I stayed there for a long time. The sun warming my back, the wind rustling the leaves. When I stood up, I felt lighter. Ready? Damien asked. Ready. We drove back to the city that night. The sky was dark, the stars bright, the road stretching out before us like a promise. Where are we going? I asked. Damien smiled. Home. I leaned back in my seat, the locket against my chest, the city lights glittering in the distance. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly where that was.